Good evening, directors and members of the Education Committee, as well as all other committees. We have part two of our webinar on personal financial planning, and we have a very special invited guest who's going to be guiding us through this, Mr. Roll Rollocks. However, before we get started, or our facilitator for this evening, we will now have our credit union prayer. Please feel free to join in. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Thank you. Again, good evening. I'm Michelle Borrell, and welcome to Tranquility's second part series brought to you by the Education Committee, in which we have personal financial planning. Our facilitator for this evening and special guest is Mr. Roll Rollocks. Mr. Rollocks has been in the field of business coaching and financial planning for over 20 years. His experience is supported by professional qualifications through the International Association of Registered Financial Consultants as a registered financial consultant and the Certified Financial Planner CFP program through Reutech. Mr. Rollocks, a certified trainer for over 20 years, conducts several financial planning seminars for individuals and also SMEs on an annual basis and has some other key areas of focus. So these areas include team building, strategic planning, productivity, marketing, and sales with SME business development as his life's passion. Wealth management seminars, a host of them. Mr. Rollocks has facilitated over 200 training sessions and seminars on various aspects of wealth management since 2000. Some key clients include US Embassy, Hilton Hotel, TN Tech, to name a few. And one quote that he lives by is financial planning is about more than just good advice or investment returns. It's about providing guidance that you can trust. And trust that this evening you will have a lot of information that you will be able to use webinar rather. So welcome and thank you for joining us here at Tranquility Credit Union, Mr. Roll Rollocks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Borrell, and certainly a pleasure to be here with you again. I know that I'm sure maybe some of you were with us on the last session where we focused on retirement. So there may be, a little bit of repetition in terms of some of the principles. But certainly as we go along, I'm really hoping that, you're open to ask your questions. I always say at the beginning that, when it comes to applying these financial principles, we always have to take into consideration a person's specific situation, right? And not everything I share will apply to everyone in the same way, all right? Each of us will have to tailor and custom fit, these solutions to their particular situations. Some may work for some persons, it may not work for other persons, particularly because too, of course, a lot of us would recognize we have different risk profiles, and that's a terminology you will hear from time to time in the investment world. We have a different propensity to take risk. There's some persons who can lend a friend $10 and it's no problem. Another person will lend $10 and they can't sleep because they're worried about whether or not they will get it back. I don't know if you know anybody like that, you can give me a thumbs up, right? So that's the terrain. It doesn't always apply to everyone, but certainly I encourage you to ask the questions along the way. really engage some of what we have to share. I know for some of you, it would just be a little confirmation of what you already know. For other persons, you maybe have some new areas, and certainly feel free to ask questions as we go on. So let me first start by sharing my screen. Okay. And you let me know if you are seeing my screen. Are we seeing my screen?
Yes, we are.
Yes, you are.
Excellent, excellent. I'm seeing some person saying yes in the chat. And you'll have to help me with the chat. Thanks, Afisha. All right. You know, before I jump in, I just wanted to get a little feedback. You know, you've been invited to the sessions, and no doubt some of you in coming to the session would have various expectations. There are things that you may have a particular concern financially. Would anybody like to care to share a little bit so I can get a feel for the persons in the room and their areas of concern? It's Michelle, it seems like the persons are
Mr. Rollocks, you're currently on mute for a little bit. Okay, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I saw a sign coming up there. I'm not too sure why. Yeah, great. So I don't know if you heard what I asked. I asked that, you know, I wanted to do things a little different this time. I know that you would have seen the invitation, and in your mind there would be some sort of expectation. I want to open the floor a little bit to hear from you. Maybe there are areas of financial concern that you have that are top of mind. I just want to get a feel for the persons in the room and the kind of issues that they're either facing or would like, you know, some more information on. You know, I know we had Afisha give me a thumbs up earlier. Afisha, when you talked about the session this evening, any particular area of concern?
I would give a general appreciation, I guess, for persons to be able to structure their expenses and looking at the savings aspect as well on investment.
Yes, yes, yes.
I guess some persons who would have mortgages and car loans and that kind of stuff, if they wish to pay off at an earlier period, how does that fit into their financial plan? Doing advance payments when it comes to their mortgages, paying off more than before the time, that kind of aspect may cover everybody, I guess.
Right, I see. Thank you. And we're going to spend a little time on it. There's a little piece on debt management. I trust we'll be able to get to. You know, we have a number of areas to cover, but thank you for that. Anybody else? What about Nadia, Sudan? Any area of concern for you?
No, I'm just here for information gathering today. So yeah, based on what we're discussing, you know, things may come to mind and I may pose questions at that time, but I'm just here for information gathering and to kind of absorb what is being offered.
I see a Sasha. Is that Strawn? Raise the hand.
Yeah, so it's Shashia.
Sashia. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'm
Shashia.
sorry. Thanks. Yeah, Shashia. Did I get the surname right though? Was it?
Yeah,
Strawn?
yeah. You got it, Strawn. Beautiful.
Great. Thank you.
No problem. So my question, my concern is just sustainability. So if you could talk a little bit about that and how to sustain your finances.
Sustainability from the perspective of making it last a long time.
Yes, correct. Well, try to.
Try to. Yeah. That's often a function of managing your budget. And we won't spend too much time on budgeting, but I'll just say that, you know, in all these sessions that I'm doing, you know, I share, and I also on a couple of panels, like I'm on the panel with elders and associates. So I see people every week from various, you know, organizations across the country. And for me, the big thing is discipline, you know, Ms. Strawn. The big thing is really discipline. There's a lot of information out there, but only so much is really shared. So how do you arrive at a place where you can, you know, install these financial disciplines into your life? I think is the key thing. And certainly that means getting some help. I'll take one more before I jump in. What about Catherine? Catherine, you care to share? I see a Kiefer Stew. I hope I get the name pronunciation correct. Michelle, they're afraid to share. What about Lucas? I see a Lucas here.
I'm just here with an open mind. Obviously, this is my first session. Right. I understand this is part 2.
Yes, we did retirement earlier.
Yeah, so I'm just really here with an open mind.
Okay, great, thanks. So I'll jump right in. Thank you for your comments. And as I said, as we go along, you know, feel free to ask questions, and those questions that I can't answer, I would certainly share and let you know. I'll get back, you know, with an answer maybe through the committee. Okay, great. So we want to jump right in, and you know, there's this popular quote. I don't know how many of you know it. It says, "An investment in knowledge pays the best interest," by Benjamin Franklin. And I think it's always a good place to start to recognize that we live in a time of, I mean, it's information overload. And certainly challenge now is how to apply that information, because there's so much. And within all of that, there's also fake news, all right? And, you know, it really can be a challenge, but I certainly encourage persons to invest time in, you know, this has to become part of your life, all right? It's not the kind of thing where you set it and forget it. You put it on automatic and it just runs. You know, there's always new stuff. There's always stuff happening. Things are changing. Nothing is static. It's just like making a financial plan, which we're going to get into very early. You know, even if you put a plan together, nothing remains the same. Interest rates are fluctuating all the time. So you need to have some way to always be checking in. All right. So these are generally the keys that you're going to see throughout the session. Right. And they're sort of interwoven into a lot of what we'll be sharing, right? So you'll find that planning effectively, you're going to hear me talking about that a lot, all right? Because pretty often what people have is a dream. What they have is an idea. They really don't have a plan, because a plan has certain kind of components. And I'm sharing this with you based upon the statistics about the number of persons who are at particular retirement level and ready for it. You know, you get the sense that there's something about our planning that we need to improve, right? Of course, the whole idea of budgeting, and not just having a budget, but working a budget, all right? And of course, to have a budget, we're talking about having something that helps you achieve your goals. And this to me is one of the challenges that I'm seeing. You know, persons have these goals, but the budget is somehow independent of the goals. You can't see a link. And when you can't see a link between your budget and your goals, it becomes harder for you to sustain it. Somebody was asking me about sustainability earlier. You have to see, okay, if I want a car, if I want a house, if I want to get married, whatever is your financial goal, how is your budget tied to it? And if that is unclear, it would certainly pose a challenge. Making your money work for you, you know, we want to understand that you are working hard for your money. And in this time, your money has to be working as hard as you are, or even harder. All right. And we're going to explore some of those keys. We're going to talk about catering for life. And if you look at the word life, you see in the middle of life, there's if, right? And the L and the E is about living enthusiastically. But to live enthusiastically, you have to cater for ifs. In other words, every plan must cater for contingencies, what may happen. All right. So you want to make sure and, you know, keep that in mind. We did speak about retirement the last time, but it's a big part of it, right? Because the challenge with oftentimes with retirement in the whole financial framework is that if you haven't planned for it, when it comes upon you, you may not have any time to do much about it at that time, because you either at the end of your work career, you probably may not have the same vibrancy, the same health, the capacity is not the same. So it's the kind of thing that you need to start planning for long before you need it, right? And at that time, it's the easiest. And certainly, and this is a pet peeve for me, creating a legacy. And I believe if we all focus on creating a legacy, then something goes on to the next generation. And if we keep that pattern up, you know, it gets better and better for each generation. So the first question I like to ask you is, are you a victim of a financial disease? Right? And what is a financial disease? Right? It's termed as the PFP syndrome. And that really means, in short, poor financial planning. So you may not be sure. So we're going to go through some of the symptoms. So as I go through any of the symptoms, if you find that any of these apply to you, you could cough, just give me a little cough. But you may realize that, you know, maybe you're already a victim of this financial disease. So let's see some of the common symptoms, right? Overspending, right? So maybe or may not, you have this symptom, but it's something that's so ingrained in us, all right? If you give a child $5, $20, what does that child instinctively do? All right, what can I spend? All right, you know, I have met on occasion that child, I would say, listen, I need to save this, put this in the proverbial piggy bank, you know, for those of you that would have had those. But there's this thing that we want to spend, this whole idea of consumerism, and I should say high consumerism too, add that. All right, it's a challenge. So maybe not you, maybe someone you know has this particular challenge. And I must say it comes up a lot in my practice as a financial planner when people come to me, because the thing about spending is not just about the spending, it's the psychology of it, right? Some persons don't realize that their overspending is a compensation for some need that is unmet. You know, I had a client recently who, when they were younger, they could not go to the grocery and shop. And they would always be amazed at, you know, people who would come out the grocery with the baskets filled. So when she got older, she got that opportunity and she made it her point to fill her basket. And in fact, that got tied to her well-being. So she would, if she's feeling down, she'll go and shop. If she's feeling happy, she will go and shop. You understand what I'm saying? So this whole issue of overspending is something we need to look at. Then, of course, it's undersaving. And we undersave in a number of ways, right? Maybe you already realize that this is a symptom, you know, so maybe you already have PFP and you're not too sure, right? Yeah, and you're undersaving, so you would know. Now, undersaving can happen either the fact that the interest rate at which you're saving is low or too low, all right? Or the amount that you're saving to achieve your goals is too small. Either way, some of us find ourselves in that situation where we're undersaving, right? And I like to ask the question, and you may hear me ask it again. Saving really, when you look at savings and the investment, you'd realize that each of us, right, without really knowing it, each have a portfolio. That portfolio consists of all the things that you're doing to earn some kind of rate of interest. Whether you have some money at Tranquility, you have some money at Unitrust, you have some money in the bank, in a mutual fund, or under the mattress, wherever you have it, there is some expectation. Right? The question I like to ask persons here is, what is the rate of return that this entire portfolio is giving you? Has anybody sat down and tried to work it out? If I'm getting 2% at Unitrust and X% here and X% here, what's the composite savings that I'm getting? Right? And sometimes by just shifting the amounts around, you can improve what you earn. You all with me, right? By just moving the amounts around. This is not about getting more money, right? And it's actually something called asset allocation, and it's a principle we will share a little bit later, all right? So maybe or maybe not. Maybe you're overborrowing. And I can talk about all of these symptoms because I've been there, right? You know, we find ourselves borrowing all the time. Every minute we get, you know, we have a situation, we're borrowing from this one, we borrow. So we're owing mother, father, uncle, granny, Tranquility. I see Joy raise your hand. Yes, Joy?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Roll. Just one question on the return. So
yes.
as a you know, a lay person, you're working, you're trying to save. You know, you have your different unit trusts, your credit union saving and so. But for just a lay person, how would you approach assessing your entire portfolio? Because you talk about the different,
right.
You know, you just put your money down. Most people, you locally save investment, you put your unit trust, you put it in the bank, you put in your credit union. But then in terms of assessing your returns, if you're getting the best returns for your money as a lay person who busy working, how you go about doing that?
Well, the first thing is that everything that you do, and this is where the planning comes in, it has to be attached to a goal. If you're putting money in the unit trust or the credit union, wherever you're putting it, what's the end goal? What is that connected to? Is it that in X amount of years you want to do a particular investment, buy a particular asset? What's the overall goal? Are you saving towards providing emergency funding? So you have an emergency fund goal. That's the first thing to assess, right? So that way you can determine whether or not you're getting closer to the goal or not, right? The next thing is that you want to have as a goal, and you see me, I'll share this a little later, that speaks to maximizing the return on your investment, right? So you want to make sure that wherever you spend your money, wherever you put your money, you're getting the most bang for your buck. And that comes out in a number of ways. So for example, there's some places you're getting a return, but there are also fees. So you're earning 3%, but 0.5% goes out in fees. There may be ways of just by changing around your portfolio, which is all the various places that you save, you may be able to eliminate or cut down on some of those expenses. You see what I'm saying? So you want to have a goal. You want to also maximize the return that you're getting. And you also want to make sure you're beating inflation or coming as close as possible to it. All right. Right now, you know, I love to ask the question, does anybody know what inflation is right now?
Between 8 and 9%.
Between?
I think you said the last time 7 or 8.
Oh, you were here. Oh, gosh. You're cheating, I remember
man. 9%.
You're cheating.
Yeah.
But you're correct. It's hovering between 8 and 9%. And depending on what you're looking at, if you're looking at food inflation by itself or certain areas, it's probably even higher, right? So if you think about it from a saving perspective on your portfolio, if you're earning 2% and inflation is 9%, what's really happening with your situation? Right? It means that you're losing 7% value of your portfolio every year. So you're becoming 7% poorer every year. All right. Now, this is what I will say, however, right? We cannot control inflation. You know, we can't go out there and control inflation, right? What we can do is make sure we maximize return. So wherever we can get a 1% more to get as close as possible to it, all right? And I'll explain, for those of you that were here last time, I would have spoken about the rule of 72, right? You want to earn as close, because even a 1% is significant, Joy. Even 1% more, all right? Even 1%. Now, the projection is that may go down, inflation may go down to about 4%, all right? But over a long term, it tends to average about 3% over a longer term. So that's really, you know, where you want to set your returns, at least 3% and more. All right? Right? Just 1% more makes a difference, and we'll talk about that, right? So to answer the question, so we said overspending, undersaving, overborrowing, right? The next one, of course, is living paycheck to paycheck. And I know that's nobody here, you know, at the credit union, all right? But there are other persons who have this challenge. By the time they get one paycheck, it's finished and they're looking for the next paycheck. You see what I'm saying? if you're in that situation, it may just be, can't tell for sure, right? That you may have a victim, be a victim. And of course, lack of planning, all right? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, right? And of course, there are these hazards. They can become hazards if you're not prepared for them. Unemployment, disability, that, you know, that you're not prepared for, old age, that you're not prepared for. All these things can become real viruses. They all affect your income, sustainability. That's a question I got a little earlier on. You know, they all suspect that. And the question is, have you catered for all of these, right? So what's the prognosis of this? Financial insecurity, continuous debt, the indignity of owing money. And I've been there. I know what it is to be ducking from persons, you know, because I know I'm owing them money. So if they're passing on that side of the street, I'm going on that side of the street. You understand? Or I'm not taking a call, tell them I'm not home, tell them daddy say I'm not home, you know, that kind of thing. And with that is the low self-esteem, of course, future of dependency, right? And there's another way to look at this, all right? You may or may not recognize yourself as being a victim of a financial disease, but certainly this is what the stats are saying, and these are global stats. I believe I would have shared these stats before, but I think it makes sense to reiterate that age 65, this is the situation that's going on, right? 60% of the persons are either dead or dependent, right? Dependent on family, dependent on friends, and I'm sure you may know persons like this, right? 35% are usually still working. And still working not because they choose to, but because they have to. They have no choice. If they don't work, they are not going to survive. 4% are financially independent. Of course, you have 1% that are rich for all kinds of reasons that you and I know, all right? Just wealthy beyond, right? So the question always is, if you had to make a choice, where would you want to be, right? Would you want to be in the dependent quadrant, the still working, independent, rich? Any takers if you were to answer this question? I heard rich.
I want to be rich. Everybody wants to be rich.
Actually, no, you know. I have learned that not everybody wants to be rich. Some people don't like it at all. Other persons say it, but they don't mean it. In other words, it's something that they mouth, but they don't put things in place to make it a reality, because it means effort and time, effort, energy, and a whole lot of other things, right? But certainly, I don't think anyone will say, listen, me, Mr. Rolex, I want to be an independent in the green section. That's me. Nobody ever says that. But the reality is, if you fail to plan, if you fail to plan to fail. I mean, know the saying, right? So this whole question of financial planning is a critical part of this thing. It's a critical key, right? So the question I'll have for you is, what's in your financial plan? When you hear the term financial plan, what does it mean, all right? Certainly you're talking about something that is written in some form, right? Whether you doodle it somewhere, you have it in a book, you have it in Excel, you have it in a proper format, whatever it is, it has been found that the psychology behind that is that as you begin to write and put things down, you begin to see it in a way that's difficult to see in your head, especially when you have to navigate several years of planning, where you plan it between now and the next 5 years. How do you juggle all that in your head, right? One advice is to have it written somewhere, right? So this financial plan is a comprehensive picture, right? And it's difficult to have a comprehensive picture in your head of your current finances, your goals and strategies you've set to achieve those goals, right? Of course, we mentioned it would involve your goals. It would involve your current cash flow, your budget, savings and investments, how you're going to handle debt, insurance, and so forth, which talks about handling the ifs in your life. And of course, your net worth, right? Which is a very important key to understand. In other sessions, I may be able to go into more depth, but your net worth really looks at what you own versus what you owe. And that difference is called your net worth, all right? You may have, let's say you have a property and it's $1 million, but you still have $500,000 owing on the mortgage to pay, right? Your net worth from that perspective, that's the only asset you have, would be $500,000, right? So if you look across all your portfolio, look at all your investments, everything that you have, and you minus that, you get a sense of your net worth. Now, from a financial planning perspective, what you will find is the goal here is to increase your net worth over time, right? So this gives you a sense of whether or not your strategies are working, whether or not you're getting wealthier. You understand? So that some people see wealth as being able to spend and to buy things. It really is in your net worth. And anytime you see any, you know, you'll see these things where Forbes or whatever would give you a sense of this one is with this one. Bill Gates is this amount, Elon Musk is this, Jeff Bezos, all these guys, all right? Your net worth is what you're talking about. What you owe versus what you own, the difference is your net worth, all right? If every year, right, you're adding more, right, to what you own, all right, your net worth will increase. But if you're adding more debt, all right, you find your net worth will be declining. Or if what you're doing, your investments are not performing well and not working for you, you find that your net worth is going down, right? Any questions there before I move on? Very important key here on your financial plan. So I want to encourage you, all right? You may not be the person to do an in-depth plan, but once you begin writing these things down, you begin to understand, you know, how things relate, right? One of the challenges is that you don't only have one goal, you have several goals, right? You have to eat, you may have children, you may have an illness, you have a car to maintain, you have all these things going on at the same time. And if you're trying to juggle all of this in your head, you're going to find it a little difficult. So I encourage when persons come to my practice to get into the habit of writing these things down, right? The other thing I want to mention and speak to is the issue of the types of goals. Now, these are generally the types of goals, which are acquisition focused, getting stuff, purchase an asset, buy a car, buy a house, get food, clothing, enjoy myself, entertainment. I want to travel. I want to educate so that I can earn more money, so I could buy more stuff, all right? I may want to get married, to share the wealth and share everything that I've acquired with, and I want to pay bills, right? But I want to encourage persons to add these as goals as well, right? Which are more wealth management focused. So the challenge that I've found is that not enough persons have added wealth management focused goals to their plans, right? So this will include things like minimizing expenses, right? Do you actively seek ways to minimize expenses? That's one of the disciplines and one of the keys, all right? And you do that in many ways. Sometimes by just, when you're shopping, asking for a discount, you know, or sometimes you want to buy a particular thing and you realize, listen, man, this is this X brand. Maybe if this brand gives me the same value. What is your strategy, all right? Taking care of assets is another way of minimizing expenses. If you have a car, whatever asset you have, if you're taking care of it, over time, you're going to spend less on that asset. If you don't take care of it, then it's going to become a massive expense, all right? And there's a whole session that sometimes I do on minimizing expenses where we get together and we share in all the areas, whether it is car care, home care, buying clothes. There are so many areas, you know, that we can explore in this area. So I encourage to have that as a goal. And I'll put the rest up as well, you know, for time's sake, right? You want to have maximizing return on investment goal, right? Getting the best. If you're going to invest in a mutual fund, find out what mutual funds are paying. You understand? And then make a decision. Don't just invest in a mutual fund because X says so. Compare and contrast. You need to have health goals. Very important part. You know, and people ask, how is that related? Because your health is your wealth. And I've seen this phenomenon too often where persons ignore their health and it becomes a financial challenge, especially if you have a critical illness. I've seen so many times persons don't cater for critical illness in their life. It happens because they run down their body or they didn't take care very early, especially men. You know, things happen and you just say, yeah, I'll check the doctor sometime. Yeah, I'll check the doctor sometime. And then before you know it, years pass, right? And you have this massive growth that you didn't pay any attention to. And then your finances on the left-hand side you know, that asset that you spent all that money, to acquire, you now have to sell. And ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I've seen this too many times. You know, I recall a client, a very wealthy client, a business client I had, who didn't put anything in place as far as insurances and so forth. And they had to sell property. They own property at Cipriani Boulevard. And there's one thing to have property, but when you have to sell it to handle health issues, it's done under a forced sale situation. It means that you're not going to get what it's worth because you need the cash urgently, right? So along with that, you have personal growth goals, emergency goals, funding goals. What's the emergency fund like? Some persons recommend 3 to 6 months of your critical expenses saved somewhere, right? Retirement goals, business goals for those of you that are so inclined, financial independence goals. What does it mean to be financially independent? That's a question each of you have to answer, right? And of course, legacy goals, right? Any questions there? Acquisition focus goals, wealth management focus goals? Johanna?
Just one question on your health goals.
Okay. Yes, who is this?
Joy.
Joy, okay, Joy again, sure, thanks.
Just some ideas in terms of, persons, what you could put in place to assist you in terms of, health challenges that might pop up along the way.
Yes, well, I said the first thing is to try to remain as healthy as possible. That's the first thing. So in terms of, and sadly we live in a time which you have GMO, this and gluten, all kinds of stuff happening. One of the things is to read labels. Just start by reading labels. Look at what you're putting into your body. All right. Some of that Chinese food, that MSG, just start by taking stock. That's the first place. Take stock. Examine also your family history, your family line. Are there any things that your particular family is prone to, right? And these are things you need to start working on now. Don't wait, you understand? Start working on it now, right? And all it takes is 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day sometimes. Walk up and down a staircase. Do something. And you really want to begin. And again, part of discipline is by building habits, right? They say it takes about, well, there are different schools of thought. Some say 30 days, some say 90 days to form a habit. It means that if you continue to do this every day, by the end of that habit period, you find it's ingrained. All right. So you want to start healthy practices. Now, once you remain healthy, you're eating right, you're sleeping right, you're handling your stress, because that's another part of health, your mental health. What do? Some people chew out their partners, some people take it out on the children, some people take it out on their employees. But please deal with your mental health. All right. All these things are important. Now, once you've done that, then programs like insurance can help. So typically you may have a health plan in your company, and that's great. If not, there are plethora of good plans out there. I believe the Tranquility has one, correct?
Yes, we do.
Yes. Yeah. So if you don't have one and you're not part of Tranquility Credit Union's plan, you want to get involved, right? And so apart from the doctor visits, your eyes, and all those other areas, dental and so forth, you want to make sure you have critical illness cover, right? And that's a really big one, because when you have to put out hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And especially in an emergency situation, it can wipe you out financially, right? So Joy, those are some of the things I would recommend, in that regard.
Okay, thanks.
So Candice Campbell, how are we going? Candice, you there? I see a Liam Plaza. Liam? Trying to connect with you all. Liam, you there?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Great. How are we going so far? You're seeing this? What do you think about the acquisition focus goals versus the wealth management focus goals?
Well, my goals kind of different because I'm going to university in September. I need a financial plan and a budget.
Okay, I think you broke up a little bit there for me, but it certainly sounds like you said you have a financial plan and a budget and so forth, right? If that's so, that's great. So as far as achieving your financial goals, there are only so many variables. Minimizing debt, saving and investment wisely, decreasing your spending, or increasing your income, right? For some of you, that might mean increasing your salary in the job. It might mean getting a better paying job. And some of you might have to get into other investments or business and so forth, right? So any one of these, with more time, Joy, we could have gone into all of them, but we have to focus here, right? So when it comes to this financial plan, you want to start at the bottom and build up. You want to practice managing money, right? And having a budget and working a budget. Because you'll find that if you're going to reach the level of accumulated wealth, you're not going to preserve the wealth if you haven't mastered that base. You understand? You want to master that base. How do you handle money? How do you deal with money? Do you handle money in a judicious manner? You understand? When it comes to spending and saving and so forth. You also want to, on top of that, once you've mastered managing money, you want to build a safety net, which is your emergency funds, right? Because things can happen, right? And if they do happen, what's your situation? What's your safety net? If something happened, any one of those ifs in life that we saw earlier, right? What's your situation? Can you recover, right? On top of this kind of platform that's the time you accumulate wealth, you begin to preserve wealth, and of course you think about leaving a legacy. Now, another thing to consider when it comes to planning is planning horizons. So you find that planning differs at different times of your life, right? Because there are different things that come into focus. So you'll find in that early phase, right? And of course, as I said in the beginning, it doesn't apply to everyone strictly. So we may have some variations, but this gives a general sense. At the beginning, you're managing your cash flow, all right? You have to acquire stuff, right? So you're buying this, you're buying couch, you're buying stove. So that's the time, right? You want to make sure and protect your income, right? So some people don't understand that the best time to get insurance is when you don't need it. That's when it's going to be the cheapest and it's going to be the easiest for you to acquire. Every other phase, it becomes more difficult. It becomes more expensive. In fact, I've heard insurance people say that, you buy insurance with health, but you pay for it with cash. In other words, if you don't have good health, you can't get it, right? So it's really one of those instruments where the best time to get it is when you do not need it, right? The same thing with protecting your assets, insurance in your home, insurance in your car, and so forth. Central Bank put out a statistic, very interesting. You'd realize how many people don't protect their homes and don't protect their cars, of course, unless you're in a mortgage situation and it's a requirement. Quite a number of people are not doing it, a very high percentage. Of course, at this time, you're thinking about putting aside for your children's education as well. When it comes to phase 2 now, between 40 and 55, you begin to realize you need to accumulate assets. And accumulating assets is setting you up for phase 3, right? Because when you reach phase 3, you can't spend too much time accumulating assets anymore. You have to focus on the income that you can generate from those assets. You see what I'm saying? So during that phase, your planning focuses on saving and investments, putting stuff down for retirement, dealing with your healthcare costs, and of course, minimizing taxes. But as we reach to the 3rd phase now, we're talking about how can we maximize these assets that we spent these number of years, right? To prepare sometimes for a time that could be longer than your work life. And I think we shared this in the retirement session, right? When you start this phase, you're preparing for a time where you may not be working or not working as you used to because you don't have the energy, you don't have the drive, you may not have the earning capacity, right? But it's a long period. That's why the first 2 phases are important. So it's one thing to have money, but it's more important to focus on the income. You understand what I'm saying? So for example, so let's say you have $1 million in the bank. You have an asset, but if the bank only is paying 1% or 0.5%, it means that it's not generating any kind of income for you to live. And that's why income maximization at this stage of life is critical. managing your retirement budget, looking at things that generate lifetime income, and understanding the concerns around long-term healthcare costs. Because some people may have, you know, gotten illnesses or whatever, and they now have to manage that from that period on, right? So this is just another way of looking at planning. Any questions here? Michelle, how are we looking for time?
We are great so far. We have it scheduled up until 7:30 this evening. Thank you.
Great. So about 30 minutes again. Thank you. Right. So sources of income, another important key to understand that when it comes to the key we mentioned about making your money work for you, or as hard as you are working, we're talking about portfolio income, creating passive income as a focus, not charity, although some people may have that in their list. All right. So you want to make sure that you are, you know, at a point where your money is working for you. And these are some examples here, right? And some of these I'm sure you would have seen before, right? When it comes to portfolio income, that is being able to buy and sell a particular asset. When you sell it, the difference you earn would be your earnings on it. So this could be buying and selling stocks, bonds, mutual funds, even currencies, real estate, or any other type of asset, right? Now, one of the things to understand when it comes to these things is that sometimes people, let's use a share, for example, right? You buy a share for $10, right? And in 5 years, it's worth $20, so it has appreciated, right? Now, that is what you call unrealized gains. And that's a challenge sometimes when you're looking at your shares. You really want to look at shares that, in addition to appreciation, give you some kind of income through a dividend as well. Reason being, by the time you're ready to sell it, it could go back down. You understand? So it's one of those things you have to balance out in your portfolio, all right? Then, of course, there's passive income where you're getting dividends. In the credit union, you know, that's a big thing. And I have to say, the credit unions have been very consistent. Most credit unions give somewhere around 2.5 to 3.5% dividends, and that's very good when you're looking at the market. For some of you might be able to do rental income, business income, creating and selling any kind of IP, intellectual property, which would be a music, a book, you know. And some of you I know have dealt into multi-level marketing. We have any multi-level marketers in the room? Any thumbs up? Anybody has tried multi-level? We're talking about Amway, we're talking about longevity, we're talking about coffee. I mean, there have been so many over the years. Nobody at no member.
I have tried. I have tried.
This is Joy?
Yes.
Okay, which ones you've tried, Joy? If you don't mind.
Amway.
Amway.
I would have tried IML.
Right, that's the Forex. Yes.
Yeah, the one with the coffee.
Right, the coffee. Yes.
Right.
Organo Gold. The name just came to me. Organo Gold. Anybody else has dealt into multi-level marketing? Nobody else. Interesting. Well, it certainly is. I don't know if people are sharing anything in the chat, but I'm not seeing any thumbs up. But certainly it's something you may want to explore. And of course, not all multi-level marketing systems are the same, but there are certainly some of them out there that you can benefit from. Any questions here before we move on? All right, no questions. So certainly as you build your portfolio, these are the things that you want. This is how you want to mix your portfolio. And for each person, the mix will be different depending on how their propensity to take risk, how aggressive they are when it comes to taking risk, right? So the amount you put or the percentages you put in all these areas would vary depending on that, right? So just some quick keys. Time won't permit us to go into all of these, but certainly if you have the opportunity, I want you to research these things, all right? Time in rather than timing, you know. Experts are saying that rather trying to time if you're into shares and you're only trying to buy at that time when you feel the shares will appreciate or go down in a way that will benefit you, then you lose out, right, over time in the market, right? I've mentioned the rule of 72, which is, for those of you, anybody here the last time can you remember the rule of 72? No takers, right? So it was simply 72 divided by the rate of interest tells you how long your money will take to double, right? So let's say, for example, you're earning 1%, 72 divided by 1. It means if you have $2,000, in 72 years, you're gonna have 4, right? That's the reality of 1% interest. Now look at this, however, which is why we were speaking earlier about maximizing return on investments. If you are able to look at the marketplace and realize, but wait, now this fund is paying 2%. I could get 3% here. You understand? Just that 1% difference. For example, if you 72 divided by 2%, let's use 2%, right? It's 36 years it will take to double. Now that's still long, but realize the 1% more has cut the time frame for doubling in half by just adding 1%. So you see how valuable it is to be looking at this principle of maximizing return. Make sure wherever you're getting money, you're getting returns is the best. Of course, there's compound interest. You want to beat inflation. You want to manage risk and return. Generally, the higher the return, the higher the risk. So you want to manage you know, a lot of people fail to see that. You may hear about some particular scheme and they say, wow, this return is very good, but understand that there's risk. There's always risk. Anytime anybody tells you this is 100% guaranteed, watch them with a little cut eye, right? I see Joy, you raise your hand.
Oh, you could tell us some of the, what is the best form of investment to beat inflation?
Oh, well, what I will do, a little later on, I'm going to share some general types of investments. Will give you a sense of it, yeah? So to answer that question, right? Any other question here? Of course, there's, okay. Oh, somebody saying no susu. Afisha. Well, Afisha, I don't know, you know. What I will say is I am not a proponent of susu, right? What I will say is that as a principle of discipline, financial discipline, it can work, right, by helping you to discipline yourself. But ultimately, we all know that you're not earning any interest, right? And that's a big drawback, right? However, there's some people, starting the susu is a good place to start because it gets them into a habit and you want to get that muscle. There's something called muscle memory when it comes to discipline. And that's the reason why if you do something over time, your muscles, your mind, you begin to, you know, create pathways in your brain, neurons and so forth. There's a whole psychology behind it. So that's one of the ways that susu would help. But I hear your concern. Dollar cost averaging.
Would you not say it is the same? Would you not say it is the same as okay, you have a target, you have a goal, right? And you want to save a certain amount. Then do a standing order. So you don't have to commit to taking out this money and going and put it somewhere. So do a standing order where your salary is coming in, right? To direct the funds directly, whether it be another account, something you won't touch, or maybe to acquire funds over time into a fixed deposit, something like that. So it really comes down to how disciplined you as the person.
Yes, yes. And I've found that, you know, automating your savings is always the best way to go. But you find that people are at all different stages in my practice. So sometimes people have to be moved from one place to another. You'd be surprised. So the thing about a susu, remember, it's community, right? And some people thrive and work in that community because, yes, because it's not just about the susu, you know, it's everything around it, the group of people that you're working with. So that is helpful for some, but you're right. Ultimately, you know, if you could do it, you know, and some people have to creep before they could walk, you know, what you're suggesting is a better way to go, right? So dollar cost averaging, I wouldn't have time to get into all these principles. Work particularly with mutual fund types investments, although mutual funds are kind of down right now, but the idea really is to invest regularly, right? In that particular instrument rather than trying to invest now and invest later. You'll find that the cost, what it costs you on average is lower, right? Than investing now, stopping and investing later. So when you look at the return versus what you put in, you get a better average. That's why they call it dollar cost averaging. At another session, maybe we can delve into these things. Asset allocation really speaks to, remember earlier we were talking about your portfolio, right? And you want to be able to look at that portfolio and begin to shift and move things around. Sometimes by just moving around the amounts, you get a better rate of return over all the things that you invested in. So asset allocation looks at how, as an individual, you assign, various amounts to the various areas that you're investing in, right? So let's move on. So some investment considerations. Time won't allow to get into all of these, but just to put them up there. See, I want you to see them and understand, So you want to have investment goals. A lot of investments are not registered with SEC, where there's some level of protection. You want to ask a question, right? So you want to safeguard yourself against fraud. And I was looking at some research, and Trinidad and Tobago in particular is prone to fraud in this area. I don't know what it is. We want to try a thing. We love to try a thing. And particularly those, what you call pyramid schemes. And I don't know how many of you have been following the legislation. They're coming down on these pyramid schemes, and to the point that if you advertise a pyramid scheme, you may not be in it, but you might send a WhatsApp, you might send a link. You say, once you're advertising, you could receive penalties, right? If you get somebody involved, there are penalties for it, much less if you actually own the fund. So you want to be careful about these things. You want to understand risk, and your risk in particular. There's a risk tolerance. If you could go online, there are risk tolerance assessments that gives you a sense, and investors generally fit into one or three categories. You're either a moderate type investor, an aggressive, or conservative, right? And by knowing where you are, it gives you a sense of the kinds of things you want to invest in. Each investment scheme should have a prospectus, which is a document explaining how the investment works, all the risk, all the fees involved. If your investment doesn't have this, you want to be careful. You want to learn the terminology, right? You want to understand time frame the investment. Some investments are good for a year, some are good for 5 years, some are good for 6 months, right? And they have to be in connection with those goals above. You want to make sure there isn't a mismatch, in other words, because you may have a goal, right? And then you're investing for that goal, but the money, you get access to the money after the time frame for the goal, then it doesn't make sense, right? So things like rate of interest, how interest is applied, right? Some things compound annually, some things compound quarterly. The more the number of compounding periods, you actually get more interest. These are things that you need to look at. Every investment has fees, or most of them have fees, right? Those that may not have fees may have exit penalties, where it's okay, keep the money, it will grow, right? But if you take it out before the time, you lose. Understand if there's deposit insurance coverage. I believe that's somewhere around 125,000 per account now, right? Any other additional benefits, and of course, habits and disciplines, you want to understand that, right? So these are just some of the considerations you want to keep in mind when you start looking at your investments. Any questions here? I see we have Amrika Sipasad. You here with us? Amrika, you there? Amrika probably having dinner. Flores, S. Flores, are you here? Are you on?
Yes, I am, Mr. Allen.
Yeah, what's the S for, if you don't mind me asking?
Silvana.
Silvana. So what's your thoughts on this part of it in terms of the investment consideration? It makes sense. It's okay, Amrika, I saw you said you had no questions. So Silvana, it makes sense. It's you see that's something that you can apply when looking at your investments?
Actually, yes, investments are very important in the credit union. I'm actually part of staff. I look at investments.
Oh, your
very
staff.
Important.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
So this is an area that you look at.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so we're moving on. Right, so we mentioned about things that you can do. So there's Forex. There are pros and cons. So you'll find that Forex is averaging between 2 and 8%. Now, some of the multi-market levels programs, I don't want to use the word schemes, are offering more. right? I'm not going to get into right now why some of these may be able to offer more, but Forex is certainly one of those things that you want to explore when it comes to beating inflation, when it comes to maximizing return on your investment, right? You see that there are some advantages and disadvantages, however, right? Because the Forex market isn't as regulated as other markets, right? Which means there's an opportunity to maybe be a little bit more creative in terms of how you earn, right? But certainly there's also the risk of fraud. So you want to when you're getting to a broker or you're getting into any program that treats with Forex, you want to do your background research, you want to go online, you want to check the Better Business Bureau to see what is being said about it. You want to do your research, right? So there's certainly Forex, right? Crypto has done extremely well. All right, you see some ridiculous returns there. This is going back from 2021 going back. You see during the COVID period, they were doing like about 59%, right? If you invested around that time, if you invested 10 years ago, you see, I don't even want to call that figure, but it's just ridiculous. Now, of course, there are challenges with crypto because you then have to convert your crypto into some cash from time to time. Now, of course, they've developed entire markets where you can trade crypto. And I know quite a lot of people now who are actually buying and selling products and services using crypto, right? So it's certainly one of those things you want to begin exploring, to get a feel for it because you see these kinds of returns there. As you would imagine, however, what you pay for a unit of some of these cryptocurrencies, that as well has gone up, right? So, but again, crypto, when you're asking me the question of beating inflation, it's one of those things. Of course, there's real estate, which you can handle in a number of ways, whether land for resale, property for resale, property for rental. And some people approach these things almost like a business, right? So more and more people are looking at home ownership, not from the perspective of, oh, yes, I have a home, but your home doesn't really become an asset unless it's doing something for you. So a lot of persons have recognized, now, listen, man, maybe my third or fourth buy might be my dream home, but for now, I'm going to use property acquisition, all right, to increase my net worth. You all see what I'm saying? So a number of persons are doing that, right? Certainly for those that don't want to be as risky, there's the home equity loans that you can have, and you can use that to raise financing to do a range of things. Afisha, I see a hand. Oh.
I was clapping.
Oh, you're clapping. Sorry, I'm mistaking the emojis. You care to share some more, Afisha?
I was actually clapping for the part where you said, you buy a home and just a rock back and say, yes, you have a home now.
Yes.
I was laughing at, how to use your home, I guess, to earn income.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some people buy property that they can develop in a way that maybe they can have a downstairs, maybe they can have an annex in the back. They buy property with investment in mind now, right? And I'll tell you the thing, maybe I would have shared this with the persons in the retiree program. Sometimes people ignore the reality that you may be facing an empty nest. So you have a property with 3 rooms, with 4 rooms, with 5 rooms, upstairs and downstairs. And I have so many clients coming back to me and saying, Mr. Rollocks, I think I have to sell it. My knees, I can't go upstairs anymore. The children out the house. What to do with this big house? You see what I'm saying? So we've seen that kind of change taking place, right? Of course, there's insurance, and some people don't recognize that even insurance can be investment. So if you haven't already, I'd encourage you to liaise with your insurance agent and ask this question about how can I use insurance as an investment tool, right? For a long time, some of the rates in the insurance, the savings portions have been able to beat the market, right? So you want to explore, the various, you also have endowment plans where after a particular time, it pays you back. So what you would have put into it, you would have received that money, right? Plus a little more, right? And of course, there's also the issue of legacy, right? Quite a number of families, and I mean, I see this unapologetically, have been able to transfer significant wealth that they were not able to do in their lifetime, but they know one of the things we're all going to do is die, right? So you have to ask the question, Why would I know of wealthy people taking out insurances for 20 million, 50 million, 100, even though they had the assets, because they know one of the things going to happen is they're going to pass away, and it's going to, this cash can go back to their lineage. So it's one of the things you want to consider. Certainly, I like to bring this idea of investment clubs, right? Sometimes we spoke about real estate earlier, we spoke about crypto, we spoke about foreign currencies. Sometimes individuals are not able to take advantage of this on their own. One of the things that is happening a lot now, and I encourage it, I like to work with investment clubs, is you pool your resources. You come together and you invest, right? Whether it is shares, whether it is foreign currency, whatever it is, right? It means, of course, having a proper agreement and understanding what must each person in the group do if they want to leave. What are the obligations, right? So, but I think it's a very powerful tool. I had a group of clients who, what they were able to do, this was about three couples. They bought several acres, right? And it was tight for them for a while, but they were able to sell it. When they sold it, they each were able to build, right? They each had like about 12, 15,000 square feet. They were able to build from the money they got from the sale, plus have a little extra acres. But they were only able to do that because they came together as a syndicate, they came together as a group, right? So I'm just giving you an example of strategies and things that people are actually using. Of course, there are business options, right? And you were asking me earlier, the kinds of returns I think later down I share style, I think we had returns of over 30% or something like that in some of the businesses we have here. You understand? So the whole idea of business investment, right? Now, a business investment may not necessarily mean that you do the business yourself, right? But you may have the cash, you may have the income, you may have somebody savvy, and somebody else has the skill, the talent, the know-how, the marketplace, they have an opportunity, but they don't have the cash, right? So whether you invested in business yourself or you invested in a business that's already ongoing or going concern or about to, it's certainly something that you could use. I know businessmen who raise money that way. When maybe they have to restock, maybe they have to do whatever in their business, they reach out to individuals and they get the money. And then because this business has been going all the time, they then pay it back out. And sometimes they pay 10, 12, 15, 20%, which is way above the market, right? So for those of you that may have a higher propensity to take risk, these may be some of the areas you'd want to go into. I mean, I have a bias being a business coach because I feel everybody should be involved in business in some way, whether directly or indirectly when it comes to achieving their financial goals. Of course, we can't end a discussion without talking about credit unions. And I know that Tranquility has a range of fixed deposits and other type of saving instruments that are very attractive, you understand? And you want to explore those as well, all right? And so I would always encourage invest in your credit union. You know, if you want to have something as a significant part of your portfolio, I believe an investment in the credit union is a way to go, right? I've seen quite a number of my clients are able to build substantially with that investment over time in the credit union. Yeah. Just to give you a feel, this is the average US stock market performance. 5 years, you see what's going on there. 17%, 10 years, 14%, 20 years, 8%, and over 30 years. And this is up to 2021, right? So these things give you a feel. And even when you adjust for inflation, it's still not bad, right? That's for those of you that may have access to the kind of cash to invest abroad. And again, remember, you can also do this through syndicate, right? So you don't have to, in other words, you can have an investment club where several of you make the investment via one of our stockbrokers here, right? What about a local stock market, right? Revenues of companies you see have grown 3.1% every year, right? Earnings for local companies have grown over 24% over the last 3 years. And we're talking about even during COVID. So you want to explore this area even here. The issue would be, what percentage do you invest? And that's where the portfolio management comes in, right? So this table kind of outlines the time horizon, the needs and the instruments. I can share this with you all a little later, but it identifies if you're trying to create an emergency fund, and these are the needs it will handle, and these are the kind of instruments: credit union, insurance, bank savings, and so forth are good places. For short term, you'd see treasury bills, saving accounts, right? So I try to match the need, the time horizon, and the instrument, right? For more long term, you'd see income and growth funds, business, and insurance, as well as ways to go. Of course, in here would be things like the multi-level marketing and things like that, but understand that all these things come with risk, right? Before I move on the slide, any questions here? Suzanne, you with us? You know, I like to call you all out. Suzanne, you with us?
Hello, good night, I'm here.
Okay, Suzanne, any questions on this particular slide or anything else that we've shared so far?
One question I have. If,
sure.
Okay, so say you want to start a business and you're not sure where to get a capital to start. So you may have your savings, you may be in a credit union, you may be in unit trust. You want to start a little business. What are some recommendations would you suggest?
Right. Now, of course, a lot of the answer to these kind of depend on the nature of the business, the kind of business, and the amount of funds you're talking about. Ideally, with a new business, you can't avoid self-funding, right? So if you do have some cash, you want to put that in the mix. That serves as an encouragement for other investors. Because one of the things any investor, whether it's a bank or even private individuals that you know like to see, is that you have what you call skin in the game. So if you're coming to raise financing and you want them to spend their money and you're not willing to spend your own money, then it could be a little off-putting and discouraging. So certainly you want to have skin in the game. You want to explore, particularly if it's a new company, private investment. I'll always go that way first. And there's a way to approach that. There's a way to do that, to set it up where you can actually offer returns, right? But it means you have to have a proper business plan and be able to know what returns you can offer, right? So having a cash flow projection, having a business plan, once you've worked it out, it means that you can go to the market. And I've done this several times with a number of my clients where we're able to even bring their friends together, have a meeting, put the proposal out, and people see, okay, this is what I can invest, this is what I can get back, this is return, And so those are some of the things. Depending on the state of your business, of course, there are things like Netco. If you're in the agricultural route, there's the ADB. And this whole startup community is really broad now. So you have all kinds of startup things. There's YTEP. Well, I think YTEP lend, I think you have to be up to 35 years or something like that. I know that it's a younger group, right? And you have deposit finance. You have a number of these kinds of organizations that are tuned to what you call development type funding rather than just the commercial banks, right? Of course, you have your credit union, right? Your credit union offers business loans, so you don't want to leave them out. And it's always good to go to a place where you already have a relationship, because oftentimes accessing funding, that's a big part of it. You have people who know you, can vouch for you, they've seen you do things before, and they're able to lend now. And just a note here so people understand that what you have to know what you're asking another person, right? Now, especially if somebody comes to you and says, listen, I want $1,000, right, Suzanne, and you've never lent them money before. What are the thoughts that go through your mind? Will this person pay me back? How they'll pay me back? Will I lose my money? That's the same question that any institution that hasn't dealt with you will ask. But if you have lent them before and they were able and they did pay you back, so this whole idea of your credit history, your credit rating, your experience, all those things come into play. And another reason why to pursue options at the credit union. But I hope that answered some of your question there, Suzanne.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Sure. Thanks. All right. So some things to ask about your investment strategy. How much money do I have to invest? What is my objective? What return do I expect to achieve? A big thing, a lot of people invest and they don't know what return they want. You're not going to know what return you want unless you understand what your goal is and the return that you need to achieve the goal. So you see how everything fits in? Fisher, I see a hand.
Yeah, before you go into investment, right? Persons might say, but they're working, they're making money, but they have so much debt. They have so much things they're paying for. They might be paying a mortgage, they're paying a vehicle loan. They have small debts they would have taken. Then they might say, well, how am I going to save? Where I getting money to invest? Where I getting money to save? So do you want to touch on the aspect of probably debt consolidation and how it allows someone to kind of see where their finances are going? And channeling one area to pay off your debt and still allowing you to put something aside for saving.
Sure. But I mean, debt management is a big issue, right? And at the end of the day, you want to lower your debt. You want to ultimately eliminate your debt, right? And of course, it's something that takes some patience. It takes some discipline. And it takes some, you have to be positively expectant about it. You can't go into thinking, oh gosh, what am I going to do? You have to start somewhere. And again, I want to put a plug here for the credit union, because having a relationship and somebody you can talk to, you can literally work out a plan to pull you out. Now, these are some of the things that you'd want to consider, right? To help break you free, right? I'll put everything up there. You know, these are just some general points, right? Know your debt. Right, where possible, and of course, not every lender allows you to do this. The credit union can speak for themselves, right? Where possible, you can pay more than the minimum, right? Sometimes paying more than once a month, right? Some people believe in paying off your most expensive loans first by focusing on that. If you're in a situation where you just have no wiggle room, then certainly you'll want to consolidate, which means one entity can take over all the loans, right? Extend it for a longer period of payback and decrease what you do monthly, which gives you a little wiggle room to save and do other things, right? And not a lot of persons take advantage of that because of they're fearful, right? But certainly consolidating can help, right? Now, you can pay your most expensive loans first, right, in priority. In other words, when you put in the extra, or there's also the other method, which is the snowball method, where you start with the smallest loans first and then you build out. And the idea behind this is really more psychological. You know how a snowball works. The more it turns, the more it gathers momentum. And the idea is, if you get accustomed to paying off your bill, that creates a kind of excitement. It creates a kind of a sense of accomplishment. It helps your self-esteem. It helps to give you the motivation towards the other types of the bigger loans that you have. So that's a strategy that may work for some, right? You want to keep track of your bills, right? And pay them in less time and whenever possible, especially those credit card bills. I mean, I would probably suggest to some persons, you know, credit cards may not be for you. Although I know we're going in an age now, it's becoming more and more difficult to manage, because even some of the credit bodies tie in this credit card thing to your credit scores, you know. In some parts of the world you go and, you know, it's difficult other than having a credit card, but you want to, where possible, I would say, bring it down to a minimum. I would say, if it's a big problem, cut it off altogether. I have been there before and I've had to do it myself, to just cut up that credit card, get it paid off for. And that's another area where consolidation loan can help, where you can approach a credit union, right, and get a loan to pay it off, because the rate of interest that you're paying, I mean, on these credit cards is phenomenal. In fact, when you see some of these bank reports, this is an area where they're making a lot of their money, right? Where people are paying late, you know, and all these extra fees are related to it. So you want to be careful with that credit card, right? Anything that you can do to shorten the length of your loan. We spoke earlier about consolidating, paying on time, have a budget and stick to it. You see, I have stick to it, you know. Sometimes what some people need is an accountability partner. Maybe that could be your husband or your wife. I'm not trying to cause any drama at home, right? But wherever you can find an accountability partner, it helps, right? Be aware of the major life events that will affect you. Manage your spending patterns. Protect your wealth with insurance. Of course, review your credit report, and that's a whole other area, you know. And maybe Joy, if there's time, you know, some of the time we could get into this whole area of your credit rating, how you manage it, because there's so many things in there. Sometimes people are not aware that the rate that they're paying for their loans has to do with their credit scores, right? And sometimes your credit score is affected by just having bad information, incorrect data, all right? Can affect your credit scores by just having wrong information. You know, sometimes there are things that are there that are not cleared. It's still on the books, right? So even that is a whole area that you want to explore in terms of the credit, right? But the whole debt management is a big part of it. For some of us, we just have to go through a period where we have to focus on getting that debt, you know, because of your situation, getting it in a manageable sense before we can do anything. That's just some of the reality for some of us. But wherever we can, we want to put ourselves in a position to lower that debt as quickly as possible using any one of these strategies, so that you can, you know, be in a position to make the investments and the savings that you need, you know. Any questions there? No, of course, everything here that I've shared, you can research. And there are a lot of graphs that will show you when you pay a little extra, what happens, how it shortens the time. Some people in the mortgage area may encourage it. Some of them mortgage houses may not. They have penalties for paying earlier, stuff like that. But you want to know, you want to find out as much as possible, right? Any questions there? Yes.
One question.
Sure.
My name is Annalisa.
Yes, Annalisa.
I've seen sometimes that we consolidate our debt.
Yes.
All gung-ho, get some great plan, consolidate the debt, get some extra spending money in our hands. And what we haven't done, and they think they're paying cheaper interest, what we haven't done is change our lifestyle or done the other part, some of the slides you showed before, to manage your expenditure.
Yes.
So we do debt consolidation, end up with some more disposable in our hands, and 6 months after we're back in the same situation, because some of the slides you showed before, we did not reduce our expenditures or even take that extra cash then, and let me do it in a fixed deposit in a credit union. Let me do it in a fund, a salmon tree fund that will make my money. So that disposable income goes to commodities, goes to none.
Yes.
So we have seen that. So we just think, all of us,
we all have been guilty.
Now, if we're going to consolidate the debt and then find ourselves back in the same situation 6 months from now because we've made no other changes, then you're back in the same monkey pants. And just for, if you were going to finish paying off in 25, you're now paying off in 30 and in the same situation. Now you feel that other financial institution gave you something better, but you now back in monkey pants because I would have perhaps sold I might perhaps gotten rid of my shares. My shares are my equity. That was equity. That's an investment. Shares are equity. So you get rid of your shares and they had nothing now. So no time value of money on that because you get rid of the shares. I just see some of that happening. And I think something you said very important that an old boss accountant told me many years ago, and I just repeated what you said. Living in my house is not an investment. Everybody say, well, boy, that's an investment. No, you're living in your house. It's not your investment because it's not making nothing for you.
Yes.
Oh, I'm buying this. I invested in this car. It's an investment. You're not using it to make money. It's not an investment. You using it. Make an investment because I like to make myself feel good. Justifying the thing in my mind. Boy, I buy myself a MacBook. I like this thing.
Yes.
Am I making it to make money? Am I, it's an investment in my knowledge, it's investment. But am I using it to make money? So while we live in the house, it's not making any money for me. My accountant boss always told me, man, that we might, some of us know, Mr. Acosta always told me that. Your house is not your investment if it's not making money for you.
Yes, it's true.
So, okay, well, so stop using that language.
Yeah.
And so I'm just sharing those two experiences that I've seen.
I'm happy. Yeah, you see, I'm happy for that, Annalisa, because, you know, it comes down to discipline. This is why I started the way I started. I started by saying that I have seen that, you know, people have all kinds of plans. People have all kinds of ideas. But if you don't apply the discipline, and that's why having the investment clubs are helpful. That's why having an accountability partner is helpful. That's why having a financial goal and a plan, because it means that when you get extra money, you have to go back to your plan and say, okay, what's happening here? So there's a connect between the things that you do, which is really a budget. So your budget has to be connected to that financial plan. You have your financial plan, all these things you want to do. The budget is supposed to be the tool to make the plan a reality. If there's a disconnect, in other words, you have your plan this way and you have your budget another way, you're not going to achieve your goals, you know? So all those things help with bringing in the discipline. And I want to quote Aristotle here, right? What we are, what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. So very often, I can tell someone's habit and level of discipline, apart from catastrophe. Catastrophe happens, things happen, you know, and there's nothing we can do about that. You know, you step out the road tomorrow and something happens. There's nothing we can do about that. But there's quite a lot that's within our sphere of influence that we let slip, right? And this is where my focus in those things are within our sphere of control or sphere of influence. And we have to find ways, and there are different ways to develop that discipline. Sometimes you have to work along with someone, sometimes having a financial planner, sometimes working along with your credit union advisor, you know, having somebody you can bounce ideas off, you know, join some investment group, read, do something. All right, other than what you're doing. If we know the whole saying of insanity, you know, when you're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So at the end, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I want to say that in all that we've said, all right, it's about that little thing that you do every day. When people come to me and I look at their situation, it tells me a whole story. And oftentimes, 90% of the times, is a true picture of what their habits have been like for the last 5 years, for the last 10 years. It tells a story. Whatever is your financial situation now, it tells a story, right? So that's probably where I'd want to kind of wrap it up. I don't know if there are any other questions, Michelle, but to say that, you know, and maybe I can go back, if I go back to the top, I could probably just repeat some of these. Because I want to make sure the keys remain with us. I haven't mastered the technology to jump from one slide to the next with me. I'm sure we have some PowerPoint masters here in the room. But I want to make sure these keys remain with us. Right? So we were talking about the financial diseases, right? And this is where we are, the keys, right? So these are the keys, right? Plan effectively. So, and you understand now that a plan is not just airy-fairy, a plan has a specific definition, right? Implement your budget, right? Make your money work for you, and we went through all the different ways to make your money work for you. Cater for life, there are ifs. You have to cater for the eventualities, the things that may happen. You have to keep retirement in mind. You save a little bit now. If you're young, you have time, you can have a wonderful retirement, and you also want to pass it on. So these are the keys, and you'd see the image there, you know, the whole idea of unlocking the mind, you know, because it unlocks possibilities for you. So That's where I like to leave it, Michelle. I'm open for any questions. I'd certainly like to hear from you in terms of any area you feel that, you know, was of value or jumped out, you know, from the session today.
Good evening. Are there any questions at this time?
You know, as we did it before, Michelle, if there are no questions, I'd just at least like to get a comment about any particular area that persons felt was of particular significance to them. Just, you can just open your mic and just share, you know. And, you know, I'd like to connect with you, Nadia. You're still with us?
Yes, I am. Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you loud and clear. Any particular area that jumped out at you found was particularly impactful?
I liked the part that said plan for the future, plan for things that because a lot of times we spend on a daily basis, but we don't look at the things that could happen that we need to set aside money for. So sometimes we do long-term investments and we do have a cash flow, just like our salaries, for example. So that stood out a lot to me because that is something people often don't think about. Yes. And I think it is critical as part of your savings, short-term savings and long-term savings as well. So that stood out to me a lot.
Thanks a lot. Candice? Any particular thing, idea, concept, principle jumped out at you?
Hi, good evening. Yes.
Hello.
I particularly liked the debt management and the different strategies that you could use to get it under control. Yes. And the table that you did with the plan for the phases, that put things into perspective for me, especially seeing that I am transitioning into a next phase in life.
Right. Yes.
I really appreciated that.
Thanks a lot, Candice. You know, and that spending thing, you know, we can have Michelle hold sessions or Joy hold sessions on just the whole idea of managing expenses. Every time I've done it, it's been a rich session where people share their strategies, you know, what they do in the kitchen to save money, what they do when they're buying clothes, how they manage their clothes, how they wash their clothes, what soap they use to extend their life. I mean, it's just amazing the amount of ideas that come out when you do the session, and people really leave rich, you know, in terms of managing your vehicle. What are the things you can do? You know, you keep your air pressure at a certain level all the time, so you use less gas. I mean, it's just a plethora of ideas. So thanks for that, Candice. Kiefer? Is Kiefer still with us?
Hi, yes, sorry. Was just trying to find the mute button.
No problem.
But again, in general, everything was so on point. Very much thankful for being part of it. More so to being a new member to the Tranquility team, and also just being there yesterday and saw the ad that they had at the front desk, and of course I was interested. Nonetheless, what would have stood out to me, of course, the keys that is ahead of us, which of course I took a picture of and I intend to always follow. I liked how the actual today's presentation was very concise, whereby it gave you a bigger picture of you know, sometimes what we suffer from in inverted commas, and you know, it showed us like what were some of our symptoms and how we can, you know, let's think of it like a disease, well, you know, death or whatever it was, and you know, so you broke it down into symptoms, you know, how we can fix it and how we can, let's just say, for the want of a better word, you know, move on. So it was very much concise, very, you know, knowledgeable, and I'm thankful for being part of it.
Okay, thanks a lot. Kanidia, did I get that street? Kanidia, did I get that pronunciation right? You still with us?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
It was very informative. It's just that I kind of forgot that you had the webinar today and my phone lost some charge, so I kind of missed
you missed some of it.
This session. Yeah. But what I saw was very informative, and I really appreciate it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'll just take a couple more. Nadia.
I spoke just before.
Oh, yes, great. And Kenrick, is Kenrick Jarvis still there? All right, not hearing from Kenrick. Well, and Michelle, I'll turn back over to you. So thank you very much, for spending the time with me this evening. It was a pleasure spending the time with you. I'm thankful for the opportunity to share, and I really look forward. I mean, at least if I can, create within you that desire to look for more, to search for more, to recognize the role that the credit union can play in realizing some of these things. Where, I mean, everything I'm saying here, you can go and search. You can search it out. So if I would have created that appetite, I would feel really very happy. So thanks again, and I guess I will turn over to. Well, I see Joy. Turn over to Joy.
Yes, good evening all.
Good evening.
Yes, on behalf of Tranquility Credit Union Education Committee, I would like to extend a heartfelt gratitude to all the persons that took the time out to join us this afternoon in this insightful webinar. I sincerely hope that the knowledge that you would have gotten this evening from our esteemed speaker will be valuable in all crucial aspects of your financial planning life going forward. And to you, Mr. Rolla, we sincere appreciation for your enlightening presentation. Your expertise would assist all of us. I hope it would assist all of us in terms of putting insights and guidance in our future financial planning. And, to all, continue, I like the part that you said, the knowledge, that part that you said, investing in knowledge pays the most interest, which is important. And so once again, thank you all for joining us today. You made this a resounding success, and thank you and have a good evening to all.
Okay, so you can get me through the credit union, or I put my number up there, 2808285, but you can contact the credit union.
Mr. Rolla, can we get these slides?
Sure, I'm going to share them with you.
Okay.
I will have to redact them a little bit.
Right,
and I'll share them with you, just like I did the last one.
Okay then.
Thank you, thanks again.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you, have a great evening.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, good night.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Okay, good night all.
Good night.